One of the other new subclasses in UA is also not a departure for druids, but it's very fascinating. You've turned a wildfire into a function of being a druid, which it very much is part of nature in that cycle. So tell me about this subclass and the story that this tells.
The druid's magic is about every aspect of nature. This includes the obvious stuff, plants and animals, weather. In Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica, we explored sort of the natural forces of death and fungus in the form of the Circle of Spores. Here we wanted to explore this natural phenomenon of fire and destruction actually being an important part of the cycle of life. Fire has always been associated with the druid, actually. The druid is the class that has, the produce flame spell. Right. The druid has been able to wield the fiery scimitar. So going all the way back to first edition, there have been fire spells in the druid. Now I think part of this, and this is speculation on my part of it is, I think because in Irish mythology and other Celtic myth, druids are depicted sometimes as wielding fire. In fact, in a massive battle that they're involved in, they're even described as calling down a rain of fire on the Fomorians that they are going up against.
Oh, yes.
So fire being associated with the druid is very traditional in a way, but this presentation is not traditional, where you have this druid who has connected themselves in a deep mystical way with this nature spirit that is a force of destruction and of life. And because of that connection, the druid is able to marshal the same destructive and also nurturing powers that spirit has. And so it's a fun take, I think, for the druid, because not only because of the themes that it delves into, but then also in terms of the play experience, the druid is able to have this fiery spirit present. And it also is doing something that we experimented with in the Circle of Spores, and that is giving the druid something else to do with their wild shape other than turn into a beast. Granted, the Circle of the Moon also does this by, at high enough level, you have the ability to turn into an elemental. And so we like using sometimes wild shape as a currency. And so in this case, if the druid wants to, instead of turning into a beast, they can manifest this wildfire spirit, which can launch fire, as you would expect. It would be a miss on our part if we say, here's a fire spirit that can't shoot fire.
Yeah.
So yes, it shows up and can shoot fire, but you can also use it to explosively teleport, because one of the abilities of this spirit is a fiery teleportation that can move your whole group from one place to another, or whatever the creatures you decide to move. This spirit also gives you the ability to do things actually with bodies on the battlefield. That's something we're exploring because, again, we wanted to show how destruction or death can give rise to a new phase of life. So again, there are these themes throughout the subclass, and I think people are going to have fun playing with it. Another subclass actually that influenced some of our work on this, and I think some fans have noticed it, is how we design the Wildfire Spirit is influenced by what we did with the pet in the Battlesmith in the Artificer.
Yes.
Where we built this pet with its stat block right into the subclass, really with the goal on our part of making it easy to use this companion. Rather than having you go look in the monster manual or another text for the stats, it's right there. Doing that also allows us to give you a lot of control because we know exactly what that companion is capable of doing. This is in contrast to regular wild shape and also how the Beastmaster Ranger works, where those abilities give you the liberty of essentially looting the monster manual and other books for any beast that we publish that is of an eligible challenge rating. Because we give you that liberty comes with a lot of limitations. Because in a way, we needed to build safeguards in because there are so many different variations with so many different abilities, and we could not predict, 5-6 years ago when we were writing the core books, what we might be designing today, 5 years later. But if we design the stat block in the subclass, because we have total certainty about what that thing can do, it means we can actually be a bit more generous in how you control that pet, what it's capable of doing. So I'm very interested to see what people think. Overall, in the Battlesmith, people loved it. And we'll see if people enjoy this very different kind of companion, because the Wildfire Spirit is not at all like the Iron Defender that was in the Battlesmith, though Iron Defender now called the Steel Defender in Eberron Rising from the Last War.
Why the name change?
The name changed because in the Bestiary section there was also an Iron Defender, and we actually needed to distinguish. We needed to distinguish between the two different creatures.
Am I allowed to ask, is its form always going to be a hound?
So the Battlesmith is able to determine what the Steel Defender looks like.
Okay, just curious. What I very much love...
Just as the Circle of Wildfire Druid is able to determine what that spirit looks like. We give some suggestions.
Like a phoenix?
You could make it look like a phoenix. We say it could really look like any animal wreathed in fire. It might also look like, a vague humanoid form, with flames on it. Really, it's up to you. We always love it when we can give players the ability to customize the appearance of something like this, especially when it's not crucial to the game that it look a particular way.
Right.
And we know that people love deciding how something sounds and looks and etc. When it's a part of their character.
Yeah, it's a very easy thing, and I certainly get caught up in it myself with like the form that is suggested. And sometimes you'll forget, like D&D is yours. You can reflavor things any way you want.
Right.
It certainly helps when the creators tell you so.
Yes. Yeah, and we in more recent books we've done that more and more because with the core books, partly we focused on like the core D&D aesthetic. And so we don't spend as much time in those books telling you, you can actually make this stuff look however you want. But one of the things actually we've learned over the last 5 years looking at playtest feedback is beginning players in particular often look to us to give them permission to customize things. So in newer material, that's why we do more often say things like, you get to decide what this looks like.
Right.
If I were to go back in time and put some extra text about spell casting in the player's handbook, for instance, I would put a note in there for all the brand new players, like if you're casting Magic Missile, you get to decide what it looks like. You're not bound by the little bit of flavor text that's in the spell, because if you decide, your Magic Missiles look like a bunch of flying pumpkins, and someone else decides they're shooting butterflies, that's great. It has no effect on what the spell does, and it's a way for you to express the personality and history of your character.
Oh, I adore that. I would always throw up a jack-o'-lantern and have it explode, Legend of Sleepy Hollow style.
Yeah.
This is also very restoration, very healing.
Yes.
So this is both sides of the spectrum. This is doing some fire damage, but also healing your party at the same time.
And that dichotomy of destruction and restoration is not only a big part of the Circle of Wildfire, it's actually a core theme of the Druid itself.
Right.
The Druid has many of the healing spells of the Cleric. There's some that the Cleric has that the Druid lacks, but the Druid also has a larger kit of destructive magic than the Cleric does, and that is also intentional. The Druid has always occupied a space that we imagine as being somewhere in between the Cleric and the Wizard. That if you want to play a character who is a mix of the two, and you don't want to multi-class, and you also enjoy this sort of ancient primal feel, the Druid is the way to go. I bring this up because often people, rightly, will be so excited by wild shape, the ability to turn into an animal, that it can be easy to forget the amazing other abilities that the Druid has, and that the Druid is this full-fledged spellcaster.
Absolutely.
With, able to hold their own next to a Cleric and a Wizard, and also able to actually fill roles similar to what the Wizard fills and that the Cleric fills. So often if a group...
Even fill the role of a fighter,
yes,
as a tank.
Yes, in fact, we recently here at work had a game day. It had been a while since we just sat down and all played D&D together. And on that game day, I played a Druid, and we were all playing first level characters, and my first level Druid was essentially the frontline warrior without wild shape. It was just simply because of my ability to heal myself and have some armor on and wield the scimitar. I was up there battling it away while many of the other characters were in the back. And so the Druid has amazing versatility, not just with magic, but even with some of their weapon and armor choices.
Since the beginning, I was always so fascinated by Druids. I thought they're the coolest thing in D&D. And I wish they had more love out there. I wish more people would try to play Druids because they are so cool. And again, primordial. And there's just something about them, kind of witchy, and obviously very druidic. Because they're Druids. But it's that sense of like there's something older than time. And that's where your magic comes from. That's both scary, or it can be very inviting at the same time. It's a totally different flavor from being a wizard or a cleric.
Yeah. And we're really trying to show with subclasses like Circle of Wildfire just how interesting the Druid story space is, and that you can dive into that space even if you have no interest in spending session after session as a bear or a panther or whatever your favorite animal is to turn into. I mean, the Druid is also fantastic for the person who wants to play an animal, but again, there's so much more.
Wild shape is so evocative. It does kind of override your brain when you think of it.
Although, again, what's funny is historically, wild shape was not the signature feature of the Druid back in first edition.
No.
Yes, the Druid could transform, but that was just sort of one of several of its abilities, and its spellcasting was more formidable than its wild shape abilities. In real-world folklore, the Druid's ability to transform was actually a kind of minor, almost like party trick, and was usually used for reconnaissance, like turn into a bird to cover a large distance. But when the Druid really wanted to throw down, like again in Irish mythology, it was with like calling fire down from the heavens. And I might have mentioned this before in an interview. What's fascinating is when you look at old folklore and find out what was called the Druid gift, it was not shape-changing, it was actually foresight. That you knew that one of the most distinguishing features of a Druid was that their ability to see the future. Because the word Druid, it means, if you sort of disentangle it, it means wise.
Right.
They were the wise ones. They were, in a way, wizards. And that's kind of what they are. It's just, you can almost imagine them as wizards of a tradition far older than
proto-wizard.
Than the form of academic wizardry that wizards practice.
Yeah.
And also Druids, in a way, their magic and their practice of it feels even more ancient than what clerics practice.
Yeah, I love it. I'm convinced everyone play a druid now.